kids. It's been a long time. It's Mr. John. It's been a very long time. I suppose I should talk about it a little bit. And I will. And after that, I think we will go ahead and read our story for today. If that's alright with you guys, let's get to it. I guess it's been over 2 years since we've talked. A lot has changed. I've cut my hair, and things change as we grow older. One of the things we have to learn is that sometimes our friends go away. And it's not anyone's fault. Sometimes people pass away. What that kind of means is that they're not here with us, but they're still with us in our heart and in our memories, but we're never going to see them again the way we see other people in our lives. And that can be really hard to handle. My cat Driel went away about a year and a half, 2 years ago now. And I miss her every day. And it can be really hard to miss someone this much because you don't know what to do now that they're gone and they can never come back. The best thing to do is to try to just keep going and hope you're making them proud, living your life the way you think they should. Living your life the way you think they would want you to. But when I say that, I don't mean don't do things the way you want to do them. You should live your life the way you want to. Just be honorable to yourself and be honorable to your friends, the ones that are here and the ones that aren't. Enough sad talk for today. Let's go ahead and get to our book. Well, kids, today we're doing something a little different. We're going to read a longer book, but we're only going to read the first chapter, because we don't know how long this will go. You guys might not be interested in it. If you are, we'll read more, like a chapter an episode, but we're going to do that in a different series. That'll still be on this channel, but it'll be another collection of videos that we will put somewhere else. So you don't have to worry about it getting in the way of the regular show. If I don't take so long to make another episode. But these were books that I collected when I was little. I don't remember where we would get them, but they were always in this square shape, and they were all very, very old, very, very good stories. Stories that your parents might have heard of, stories that your grandparents might have heard of, and they've been around a while. Normally today, most people read on their computers or on their laptops or something, but there's nothing quite the same as reading a story from a book. In a book. The feel of the paper on your hands and the way the word is printed is not going to go anywhere. The screen's not going to twitch or anything. And it's just, there's something really special about reading a book. And I should have told you guys this a long time ago. But here we are. Today we're going to read the first chapter from a story called A Journey to the Center of the Earth. This book is by Jules Verne. And you could probably find a copy of it anywhere, and there's many different versions of it. This is obviously for younger readers, a younger audience. There's much bigger versions, there's much longer versions, much more adult versions. If you want to read it, I would really recommend any of the stories by Jules Verne or any of those stories from those older authors, at least the popular ones, the ones that, you know what, make your own decisions on what you want to read. But today we're going to read the first chapter of Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne. This one is adapted by Howard J. Schwartz, illustrated by Brendan Lynch, by Moby Books, Polymore Inc. Publishers. These ones are harder to find, so if you want to collect these books, ask your parents to help you find them. I would look on the internet, or maybe a used bookstore. You'd be very lucky if you found them at a used bookstore. Okay, here we go. Chapter 1, The Great Discovery. Looking back at all that has happened to me since that eventful day, I am hardly able to believe that my adventures were real. They were so wonderful that even now, I'm amazed when I think about them. I was living with my uncle, a German who was a professor of philosophy, chemistry, geology, mineralogy, and many more ologies. Professor Hardwig, my uncle, had invited me to study under him, for I was greatly interested in learning as much as I could about the earth and what lies under its surface. Although my uncle was a most learned man, he could speak with the greats of the scientific world in almost any language and could classify 600 different geological specimens by their weight, hardness, sound, taste, and smell. He did not at all look the part. He was 50 years old, tall, thin, and wiry. Large glasses hid his vast, round, bulging eyes. His nose was thin like a file and was constantly being attracted to tobacco. When he walked, he stepped a yard at a time, clenched his fists as if he were going to hit you, and then walked on. At most times, he was far from a pleasant companion. But Professor Hardwig is by no means a bad sort of man. However, to live with him means to obey him. So, when he came home one day and began to call out, "Hurry, hurry, hurry!" I hastened to go at once, even though at the time I was more interested in finding out what was being prepared for dinner than what my uncle wanted from me. I took the steps 3 at a time and presented myself to my uncle in his study. My uncle's study was a perfect museum filled with minerals of every kind. When I entered, he was studying a book, not even aware that I had joined him in the room. "Wonderful!" he said to himself as he studied the book. "Wonderful!" The book was an old one, yellow with age, just the kind of book my uncle enjoyed the most. "Did you want something from me, uncle?" I asked. "It is the Heimskringla of Snorri Sturluson," he said, "the famous Icelandic author of the 20th century. It is a true account of the Norwegian princes who ruled Iceland." "What language is it in?" I asked, hoping that it would be a German translation that I could read, but my uncle would have nothing of translations. Only original works would do. "It is a rune manuscript," he said, "the language of the original population of Iceland." He was angry at my ignorance. My uncle had picked up the book to show me the strange letters of this language when a scrap of paper fell from between 2 of the yellowed pages. My uncle seized the paper like a hungry man snatching at a morsel of bread. It was an ancient parchment about 3 inches by 5 inches, with strange-looking characters written all over it. "Is it runic?" my uncle declared, his voice and fingers trembling. I looked at it closely. Little did I know then that this small parchment would lead us on one of the most wondrous adventures ever known to man. While my uncle could read runic, he could not decipher the meaning of the letters on the parchment. Just then the cook called up to us that dinner was ready. "I cannot be bothered with dinner," my uncle yelled. But I was hungry and went to dinner. I was just finishing the last of my dessert and wine when I heard my uncle roaring for me to come up at once. I made a leap for the stairs to his study, so loud and fierce was his call. My uncle was sitting, staring at the small piece of parchment. "I declare to you that it is runic," he yelled. "It contains a wonderful secret that I must get at any cost." I looked at the letters on the parchment. They made no sense to my eyes. "Sit down," my uncle cried fiercely, "and write what I tell you to write." I obeyed at once. "I will substitute a letter of our alphabet for that of the runic," he said, "and we will see what that will produce." He indicated the letters of these 21 words, none of which made any sense to me. Scarcely giving me time to finish taking them down, he snatched the paper from my hand and examined it with deep concentration. "I should like to know what it means," he said, as much to himself as to me. But I certainly could not tell him. "It reminds me of a cryptograph, a puzzle," he said. "I may be on the verge of a great discovery." My opinion was that it was all rubbish, but I kept that opinion to myself as my uncle's anger was not easy to bear. "The parchment and the book are written in different languages," he said. "The book is about 200 years older than the parchment, so the parchment must have been written by some person who owned the book later than the original owner. So the next question is, who owned this book?" On the inside of the cover, my uncle found what at first looked like an ink stain, but on closer inspection, it proved to be a line of writing almost rubbed away by time. My uncle studied the letters. "Arni Sakusn," my uncle cried in triumph. "He owned this book. He was the brilliant Icelandic professor and chemist of the 16th century. It was he who wrote the mysterious words on the parchment. Perhaps some astounding discovery of his." My uncle walked around the room in a state of excitement. "Until I discover the meaning of those words," he vowed, "I will neither eat nor sleep." "My dear uncle," I began. "Nor will you either," he cried. I was glad that I had just eaten an unusually large meal. My uncle and I tried various languages and variations of languages on the letters of the parchment. We worked for hours, but the parchment yielded no clue. My uncle felt certain that Saknussemm had written his message in Latin, as most educated men of his time wrote. But the order of the letters provided no known Latin words. Then my uncle began reading the puzzling cryptograph all sorts of ways, according to some theory of his own, and he had me write it all down. It still made no sense to me. My uncle became enraged. He struck the table with his fist, then left the room and the house, slamming the doors behind him as he went. I sat down for a while, relaxing and smoking. Then my mind returned to the parchment, and I picked it up and began studying again. I found a few scattered Latin words, an English word, and several French words. It was enough to drive a man mad. The heat in the closed room was too much to bear, and I began to fan myself with the parchment for the first time. I saw both the front and back of it. Imagine my surprise when, glancing at the back of the parchment, I saw that the ink had gone through, revealing the Latin words craterum, crater, and terrestrial, earth. I had discovered the secret. All I had to do to read the parchment was to look at it backwards. My eyes were dazzled, and my hands trembled with excitement as I began to read. But what horror and shock possessed me as I discovered a terrible secret. It had already been accomplished. A man had actually dared to do... what? I immediately made a decision. No living being should know the parchment's secret. "Never," I cried. "Never will my uncle learn this dreadful secret. He would immediately undertake the terrible journey revealed in the message. Nothing would stop him. I could not allow such madness, nor could I take the chance of my uncle discovering the message. I would have to destroy it." I snatched up the book and the parchment and was about to toss them into the fire when my uncle entered the room. He did not even notice what I was about to do as he took the materials from my hand and began to look at them carefully. My flesh crawled as I realized that he might soon discover the way to read the parchment and its terrible secret. Hours went by, but I dared not leave the room. I went to the sofa and soon fell asleep. When I awoke, my uncle was still at work. His red eyes, matted hair, and feverish hands testified to his work. I loved him and truly felt sorry for his suffering, but I could not reveal the terrible secret. He continued to study the parchment as night turned into morning and morning turned into afternoon. At about 2 o'clock, he gave out a yell so loud that I almost fell from the sofa. Yeah, where I was still resting. Jesus. "Backwards!" he cried. "It is backwards how cunning Sacnium was," when he began to translate the parchment. "Descend into the crater of yokel of sniffles, which the shade of the scartarns caress before the clendens of July, audacious traveler, and you will reach the center of the earth. I did it. Arni Sacnutum." My uncle leapt 3 feet off the ground, then ran about the room wildly, knocking over tables and chairs, tossing his book up in the air. "We start at once," he cried, "and you shall share my glory." "Start for where?" I asked, afraid of the answer. "To the center of the earth." So that's chapter 1. Let's see how much. That's about this much of the book. Let's see if you can see that. So there's a lot more to read here. And maybe we'll get to it again. Maybe we'll read more of it. Maybe we won't. It all depends on you guys. I want to hear what you guys think. I would love to know if you want more like this or more of what we've been doing before. I have no problems going either way. I just want to make you kids happy. So, until next time, stay safe. Stay happy.